Everyone, and welcome back to Finding Flow, the podcast where we explore the real stories behind how top founders, investors, and leaders build momentum, create success, and stay aligned with their values along the way. I'm your host, Carl McDonald, and today's guest is someone who has helped shape the public presence of some of the most exciting companies in B2B tech, venture capital, and climate innovation. He's a true expert in executive storytelling, media relations, and brand credibility, and he's built an agency around doing it with purpose and impact. So please welcome Todd Barrish, president and founder of Indicate Media, a strategic communications firm that's been helping ambitious businesses tell their stories and earn attention since 2011. Welcome, Todd. It's really good to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to be here. Great to hear my background.
Yeah,
Wow.
totally.
Right.
So let's start at the beginning. What first drew you to the world of PR and communications?
So when I live right around New York City. We are basically a New York City based agency, except for during COVID, we went fully remote. But when I
Yeah.
came to New York City, I was looking for a job.
Mhm.
And at that time, it was 1999. So I'm probably dating myself. And in 1999 in New York City was a super exciting time because there was this new thing called the internet and the potential of what that could do and how that was going to change lives. Very reminiscent now to where we are with AI. And I was looking for a job and I knew I wanted to do something in the communications field. Wasn't sure it was going to be PR, maybe marketing, maybe advertising. Wasn't sure. I was young. And one of the interviews I went on at a PR firm, at a technology PR firm, I met a lady who was interviewing me, and she was the most impressive person that maybe at the time I had ever met. She was smart and she was organized and she was talking about things that were kind of blowing my mind. She was talking about things like someday everyone's going to have a computer in your pocket and what how the world is going to change. And of all the interviews I went on, I actually went on 6 interviews, and at the time I got 6 job offers. I got them all because that's how New York was back then. There was a lot of money flowing around, but I
Mm.
thought this person was the one that I can learn the most from. I was fascinated by the things she was telling me. So I took a job in technology public relations and have been here ever since. And she's still a mentor of mine to this day. Yeah.
Amazing. That's fantastic. That's so great that you found someone so early on that
Yeah.
you kept in touch with and has been a mentor to you. So
Yeah.
that's incredible.
Yeah.
Um, and I know that you've helped shape the public image of countless startups and scale-ups. What's changed the most in the PR and storytelling landscape, especially with the rise of generative AI?
Well, I mean, and that is the term, GEO. And
Yeah.
what's changed over the last like 3 months has been tremendous.
Mm.
Because what's happening now is more and more people every single day are going to ChatGPT or
Mm.
Perplexity or any number of search AI platforms before they go to Google. And then when you go to Google, you just get links and you're like, why am I getting links? I just want information. So what's changed is how people are navigating the world, how they're seeking out information. And so from a public relations standpoint, the game has been, um, I wouldn't say turned up, or I would say turned up, turned up on its head,
Mm.
if I will. But in a super exciting way. And in a lot of ways, and a PR guy, take this in grain of salt for a PR guy saying this, but PR has once again become a super important part of the storytelling process. And
Mm.
that's because what happens if you're a company, let's just say you're a data analytics company, and someone searches who are the top data analytics companies in Search AI, and you don't come up, that is
Mm.
a big problem. Or if you do come up, how do you hold that position? And so, the world of search engine optimization always felt like it was operating behind this like iron curtain. You never
Mhm.
really knew what to do or how these companies were, you know, were optimizing your content, but you knew keywords and stuff were, very important. But today you're realizing, well, SEO takes a back seat to GEO, the generative engine optimization. And, the best that we can tell, and we as in an industry and the world, is the way to influence an algorithm is through content, and but it's not keyword stuffed content of the old days. It's about thought leadership. It's about
Yeah.
expertise. It's about taking one thing and getting three, four, five legs out of it. And how do you do that? And how do you promote it? And so we're in a super exciting time in the world. And PR agencies are, especially PR agencies that are at the forefront of this, are not just talking at the high level, but actually implementing strategies for how they're going to execute this, how they're going to educate their client base on it, the workflow internally. How do you think about, we got a thought leadership piece placed in Inc. magazine. What are we going to do with it? Well, the question of what are we going to do with it probably shouldn't be random. There should be some structure to it. So agencies are putting structure to it. And then they're putting things out there. And in some ways it's tinkering. And do you want your PR firm to say that they're tinkering? Well, the whole world is tinkering. But the point is that they are pushing content forward. They're placing it, across the web in numerous ways, and they're working to make sure that the customer's voice matters to the audience they're selling to. In today's world, it's super fascinating.
Yeah, it's so true. It really is just completely changing the way everyone is working, and you're totally right. It's made PR super important. And yeah, I suppose one of the themes of this show is um, the name being Finding Flow.
Yeah,
I wanted to ask, in your world, running a fast-paced agency, advising founders,
yeah.
how do you define that flow, and how do you find it in your work?
Well, I can answer it on several levels. When it comes to directly working with, tech companies like we do, a lot of finding flow is about how you define and execute the collaboration with your partners, especially in a GEO world. I mean, look, a PR agency could be very smart. They can get you in the media, they can create content to elevate that GEO, but there's a whole last mile effect to this. And the last mile is that content needs to be placed somewhere. It needs to be placed on blogs. There needs to be an army of your either your employees, your team members, or your community that takes the content and pushes it out there moving forward. And so, we've kind of come full circle in this collaboration where, a PR firm becomes a true partner, and there's flow and there's synergy between the work we're doing, how we're pushing things out into a search AI world, how the clients are then taking it and leveraging it across the internet. And this is super fascinating. And it's, for in an old world 6 months ago, the message was very clear. Companies are very busy, and you hire a PR agency that you don't want to have to hold their hand. If the agency is waiting for the company to tell them what to do, it's probably not the best agency. An agency needs to be off and working and thinking. Well, all of that is true up until the last mile, because now the last mile depends back on the collaboration. And when it works, and it will work over time, it creates a super important flow. And so, but to do that, you need to be on a level with your clients. You need to there has to be trust. There has to be room to experiment. There has to be room to put ideas on the table that may work or may not work, but all in the course of moving the needle forward, which is always about the client's, business objectives. So that's that. And then on the personal side, I'm sure you hear this all the time. Flow is about especially so for me, over the last couple of years, I lost 50 pounds. And
Okay, wow.
I came out of COVID like a lot of other people. I worked sat through COVID in a lot of ways.
Mm.
And,
Yeah.
and I have a son. I have a 9-year-old son, and, I got to a point where I was unhappy, and
Mm,
unhappy when I was sitting around. And, I've always been an exercise person, but I
mm,
rediscovered exercise with purpose.
yeah,
Why I was exercising. And I'm a wake up at 4 a.m. in the morning. I'm at the gym at 5 a.m. 3 to 4 times a week.
that's
And,
brilliant.
it's hard and it's
Mm.
ridiculous in a lot of ways. My friends are like, you're not sleeping. I'm like, no. I'm not sleeping. But it's my flow. And
Yeah.
and in my time in the gym when I'm either on the treadmill or I'm strength training and I'm listening to music, but I'm thinking about, my customers, I'm thinking about my team, I'm a leader, what we
Mm,
want to do, how we want to advance our business. Happens a lot when I'm being healthy and
mm.
taking care of the things that I need to do to be the best person for them. So yeah, so exercise and reading and hanging out with friends. I mean, the secret sauce is different for everybody, but I'll tell you, that intention is a powerful thing. And
Mm.
when you have intention to do things and you can figure out the sauce that gives you that energy, you're a better person for everybody.
Definitely, 100%. I've also gone through periods of time where I wake up on the earlier side, so I didn't quite get to 4 a.m., but I got to 4:15 a.m. and
But
that time was like your own sacred you time. And I found it made such a difference to the rest of my day. Like my focus was much better. So I think it is really important to get the blood flowing, clear the mind. And then when you are working, you're so much more effective, you're so much more efficient, you can think clearly, you can make decisions better. So I think it's a great thing. It's a great habit to have.
yeah, it works for me. And my ridiculousness of it all is when that alarm goes off, I'm initially tired, but the
Yeah.
moment I actually step out of bed, I'm focused. And so with
Yeah.
me, but the secret for me is I need a cup of coffee. But
Yeah.
if I go downstairs and I make a cup of coffee and I sit on the couch, it's
Mm.
very hard.
Yeah.
So I'm out the door with my cup of coffee, and most times I'm at the gym about 15, 20 minutes before it even opens, sitting in the
Yeah.
parking lot, drinking my coffee, but I'm finding my balance. And 15 minutes later, a cup of coffee in, I'm ready to go hit it, ready to kill it. Yeah.
Yeah, t totally. It's funny. I sometimes found when I didn't wake up early, um, during that day, I would actually be more tired.
Yeah.
Than if I woke up early. Like yeah, it's strange, but yeah, it's a really good routine. I I know that your agency works with VC-backed companies, so often hyper growth. What is your advice for founders or CMOs when it comes to owning their narrative, especially in a crowded, hype-heavy space?
Well, so it's a great question. I mean, at the very end of the day, storytelling needs to be strategic. And you need to match a story up against your business objectives. So when you think about storytelling, when companies come to Indicate Media and they say they want to have a better brand presence, we usually say 100%, but brand presence is always defined by the work that we do, but it's not the objective. The objective is to develop a strategic communications campaign that helps them advance their business objectives. And so when you look at it that way, everything you do, everything you say, every press release you may or may not want to put out has to be strategic. And then in this world, like we talked about a couple minutes ago, if you're not out there talking, but saying the right things and thinking about, your communication strategy the right way, you risk falling behind.
Mm,
And like anything, a founder may or may not be a natural storyteller. We've worked with both kinds,
Mm.
but the rest of their team also needs to, because this is about the power of the masses. And so you may be a great storyteller as a founder, but how many times over in my career we've brought, an executive team into a conference room and then we ask, if there's four of them, three of them go outside and we look at one of them and we put a camera up and we say, okay, tell us about your company. And they give us their speech and then they go outside and the next comes in and then we show them three of the four of you answered this question completely different. How is this the same company? But
Mm.
brand is built based on repetition, based on having a narrative that is consistent and purposeful and directed towards an audience. So, communications, especially in this world, um, is not to be forgotten, and in fact, to take a better seat, at the table, because those companies that do communicate well are organized, have a process and path to executing their story in a strategic manner, are better set up to achieve their objectives.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, makes complete sense. And yeah, I think working towards it's so true that it needs to be working towards an objective. It actually needs to be for a purpose. And I suppose like talking about measuring success in PR. I know it's not always as well for me. It's not always as direct as something like paid ads. So I'm very curious. How do you help your clients think about the real value of visibility and media?
Yeah. Well, it is some ways it is a black box. There are new technology, the tech stack in public relations has admittedly gotten much better over the years that do show you things like your share of voice against your competitors. You're able to see, you know, th- how much traffic a media placement may have generated. So there are like some baseline metrics that, you can look at in terms of is the PR team executing and what's the measurement of that. But it goes much further. Like how do you measure the success of your PR team? Well, at the beginning, your PR team, you told your PR team what the objectives are. We're trying to sign Fortune 100 clients, the biggest of the big in the enterprise. So did the PR team create the messaging, tell the story, get the media that's talking to that audience, and then did that audience come knocking on the door? That's another way to look at it.
Yeah.
Even at its very, very simplest form, when you think about is your PR team executing? Every time your public relations team comes to the table, and I mean every time, every conversation, are they smart? Are they organized? Are they making you feel good that this is the right partner for you because they've done their research? They know, they bring fact and experience and credibility to the table. Because the one in my world, in technology, we work with some of the smartest people out there. You know, MIT graduates, Harvard graduates, entrepreneurs who are fascinating people doing fascinating things and really pushing the needle. And,
Mm.
as a PR team who may not have a computer science degree or an MBA from Harvard, you got to work hard to keep up and to truly understand the technology and the market opportunity. And that shows each and every time you talk to your PR partner, because the one time they don't know what they're talking about, it's a big red flag. So
Mm.
there are levels on ways that a company should judge success, and there are metrics to look at that paint, kind of a larger story, um, that hey, we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, it's I find that quite often the things that are very difficult to measure are usually the ones that have the most value. I once heard an analogy that sort of something like PR that's difficult to measure, but that's very valuable. Let's say if you compare it to golf, that's kind of like your driving. So the better you are at that, the easier it's going to be to make your most valuable sales at the end of the day. So let's say for example, if a client's looking for those Fortune 100 clients, you're going to make the job much easier over time, the better you are with the PR. So it's a hugely important thing, even though it's very difficult to measure.
Yeah. I'll tell you another side of of the measurement story is how internally I'm trying to measure my team. And
Mm,
so, now we're able to see how many emails or how many email pitches have been sent to the media, how many members of the media may have opened the
mm,
email, how did they write the story, did they not? And so I have a much better benchmark now of how productive were we in a quarter, what was our success rate, what does that look like versus the next quarter, what did that look like over the year? And then, like any good entrepreneur or manager, I'm able to make adjustments on things just based on internal data of what I am able to see and what my team's able to see that allow us to continue to, turn the Rubik's Cube to provide the best value for the client base. So, there's measurement on internally and externally that
mm.
that is advancing.
For sure. And speaking about your team, so you've built a respected agency and led teams through shifts in tech, media, and culture.
Yeah.
What is your leadership approach, and how do you build and retain a team that cares about the craft?
Yeah. Well, look, the point about how you retain a team that cares about the craft hopefully starts in the hiring process. And how you are finding candidates and what the process is to vet a candidate, all in an effort to try and find someone who has the means to do the type of work we do. It's not for everybody, because in technology PR, especially the B2B tech, or sometimes it's deep tech, you have to have a level of curiosity. You have to be a person who says, I don't understand that. It's very technical, and I have to go learn what this means because that's going to help me do my work towards, the benefit of the company and the client. And so, it took us a long time to really understand how to be that much more purposeful in our hiring strategy and the type of work we do. Um, Look, I am a focused leader. I have objectives that I want for the business, and I want to see the team love the work. I want them to know that they feel supported. I want to be generous and kind at all times. I think that's the only way to do it. And like anything, like you strive to meet that bar, to build a culture where the team wants to stay around, where they feel like they're learning a ton, that whether they stay with Indicate Media or move to, greener pastures, they're able to take all that insight and knowledge and go forward with it. The last thing I would say is, as of recently, we're also much more intentional in the onboarding and the workflow. Where for a long time, because we were winging it in some ways, like all entrepreneurs do, until you kind of turn the cube to get to the end. Uh, we would talk about things, but there wasn't necessarily a process in place. And if there was, it was a process that was talked about, not actually captured. And there's a
Mm,
big difference between me saying, here's how we do things versus truly using like a workforce management tool that defines how things are being done and takes
mm,
some of the guessing work out of a person on the team who may not know what to do, but has now a path to follow. And that makes them feel more supported because they know what they're supposed to do, and that will allow them to ask better questions, and that will allow the team to support them even more. And it kind of becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. So, you need to think about these things on a level of the type of members you're bringing onto your team. Look, in PR, you could do like hotel PR or alcohol PR. It's simpler. People know what hotels and alcohol are. But tech,
Yeah.
right. So you need to think about it in the type of person, the processes, generosity, and how you want to build a culture. These are the things I think a lot about, especially
Yeah.
in recent times.
Yeah, no, that's very good. And I suppose one final question for you. So, what is one principle that's helped you to grow Indicate Media and stay in your own flow over these years?
I'm very dedicated to my team. Like at least I really try to be. And in fact, it's been both a benefit and maybe not so much of a benefit because I generally like people. I'm a people person. I want to talk to people and I always find the good in people. I'm a person who doesn't care about your views on things or if you're a person and you want to talk, I'm very happy to talk, right?
Mm.
But that doesn't always make for the best person for the position that needs to be executed on behalf of your clients, right? So, I spend a lot of time thinking about people and how to be generous and how to help them um, fit into a role that is mutually beneficial, where they feel supported and they're growing, but it's the benefit to the firm. And in the client service business, perhaps most importantly, it's to the benefit of the client. And that's my flow, is like my flow is always about how are you doing? And then how are we doing? And then of course, how is the client doing? And and at every level, what can I do better? What can we do better? How do we position the client to be even more impactful? And it's just constant steps in the process.
That's really good advice. Thank you so much, Todd, for being on the episode. It was really valuable, very insightful, and really appreciate it.
Yeah, I love the podcast, man. Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll see you next time.
Thank you.